Well, before we get started, everyone, if you are new to Zoom, we just wanted to do a quick overview. If you have any questions, please feel free to use our chat box to enter any questions, or if you'd like to speak, let us know. You are muted upon entering, just so that way you can keep the background noise low as possible. But if you'd like to ask anything, please use our chat function, and we'll get to you as soon as possible. Another thing that we wanted to make note of before we get started is that we are going to be doing a raffle after this session as well. We are supporting some of our local businesses. So for everyone that is attending this session, we will be doing a raffle to win a $25 gift card to one of our local restaurants. So be sure to stay tuned in for this entire session to be entered for that raffle. Let's see here. And Mike, do you want to go ahead and get started? Would you like a couple more minutes?
Sure. So I think we could go ahead and get started.
Okay, so I will go ahead and everyone, we will go ahead and get our presentation going. This is for our irrigation session, so thank you so much for joining us. My name is Haley. I'm with Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District, and today we are going to be discussing weather-based irrigation controllers with our irrigation expert, Mike Madewell. Mike Madewell is now approaching 40 years in the green industry and is currently a public agency representative with Hunter Industries, a San Diego-based global manufacturer. With experience in wholesale, greenhouse, and nursery operations, residential and commercial landscape designs, construction and maintenance, Mike has spent the last 15 years at Hunter in tech services and outside sales. His main focus has been teaching irrigation design, troubleshooting, and best management practices for contractors and municipalities, both in the United States as well as in Mexico. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Mike, and he will present. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box function to enter any questions, and we will address all of your questions at the end of the meeting. All right, Mike, go ahead and you can take it away.
Thank you, Haley. And I want to thank everybody for attending today. Haley, keep your eyes on that inbox as people enter, and hit the admit button, of course, because we'll have some people coming in. I do work for Hunter Industries, and we're one of the big manufacturers, but I'm be presenting a presentation today that kind of covers smart controllers in general, and what are some of the types of controllers out there, things to look for, kind of how they work, and the whole smart irrigation controller concept has really exploded onto the market in the past 3 to 5 years, and it seems to be moving very fast. It's a very quick moving technology. So again, you know, I am with Hunter, but I'll be presenting kind of in a general manner all of the smart controller options out there. So back in the day, we used to be able to add a rain sensor to our sprinkler timers, and that would just turn off the sprinkler clock in a rain event. And so to be considered a smart controller, it actually had to adjust the program or change the minutes or increase the minutes, decrease the minutes, not just turn off and on during a rain event. So you have to remember that we live here in Southern California for a reason. It's because of the fantastic weather that we have. And all of these controllers, all the brands, Hunter HydroWise, Ratio, Orbit Beehive, Rainbird, all these controllers, they're designed for the global market, really. And as you know, here in Southern California, we have a pretty stable climate, a pretty stable weather pattern here. So a lot of the functions that are in some of these controllers really apply to the entire country, where you do have a lot of weather variance. Luckily here, we're pretty vanilla on our weather, but these systems, they can either have a sensor on site. Some of them require to have a sensor on the property, although we're kind of moving away from that as an industry, and most get their weather from the internet nowadays. Some of the controllers do have a simple dial that you can still adjust on site while it's connected to the internet. And some are little black boxes that you can't really much talk to at all. It's done completely through your phone or your tablet, a computer, cloud-based connection. So some are more user-friendly at the controller, and some are just a little electronic box. There are varieties that require you to input some of the site conditions, like sun exposure, plant type, soil type. And with that, it will take those parameters, compare that to the actual weather, or it's referred to as ET, or evapotranspiration. That's how much water the plants have been losing. So it takes that figure and compares it to your site conditions to give you a program. Then other options, you simply put in your max runtime that you ever run in the peak season, and then it adjusts your minutes based on percentage of what the current weather is. So for example, if you're running 15 minutes in the summertime for whatever sprinkler that happens to be, and you're at your max weather for your area, you would get the full 15 minutes or more, 100%, 110, 120%. But as you come into the fall and we're getting shorter days and cooler weather, those percentages will drop on a daily basis, and you get to September, October, November, December, it might be at 50%. So now your 15 minutes is 7 minutes. So some of those styles are a bit easier for the user to get up and running. So that's really kind of two different styles that are out there. You might come across the term Webix, and Webix stands for a weather-based irrigation controller, WBIC. And any of you have taken some of the QUEL classes, qualified water efficient landscaper classes that are offered all over the place. We go into the Webix in pretty good detail. For the standard controller for one-off homeowner applications, none of them that I know require any fees. You simply buy the controller, you hook it to the internet, and you go and you download the app, whosever app it may be, you know, Hunter Hydrowise, Ratio, Rainbird, whoever it is. And for one-off controller, one homeowner, one household, one user, I've never really seen any fees associated with that. It's based on evapotranspiration, like I mentioned earlier. Basically, how quickly does that plant lose water? So you guys know if you had, for example, Saturday soccer duty and you had to cut the orange slices and you're bringing Tommy to the soccer game and you're stuck at the sideline 2 hours later, you're looking for shade because you're dying, you're sweating, you're sweating, you're losing water. The plants are doing the same thing based on what time of year it is, how long the days are, how dry it is, how windy it is. All those factors dictate how quickly those plants lose water. So ET is really what all this is based on, but you have to know that ET was really born back in, I think, the 40s, where they were doing single crop calculations like for alfalfa. So ET works really, really good if you're out in Westmoreland or Brawley and you've got 500 acres of alfalfa, you've got a single exposure, and you've got one thing happening to one plant, your money. But the minute you have a whole bunch of different plants in one zone, you may have to make some adjustments to the system to kind of give it the best information you can, okay? But nowadays, technology has gotten so much. 5, 6 years ago, you were shelling out big bucks to be able to have a clock that you could talk to from your phone or from your computer. This applies to the residential market and certainly to the commercial market. Homeowner associations, college campuses, all these connected controllers through your phone 5, 6 years ago, you know, $5,000 minimum. And nowadays we have all these cool smart homes where your thermostats and your sprinkler clocks and all these things you can talk to through an app, your outdoor lighting systems. So the technology has gotten so much more accessible and the phone apps have gotten so much easier to use. So there's really no reason to not be using a smart controller. Don't be put off by the term smart. They're not that hard to get up and running. You think, well, how am I saving water? And in reality, how you're saving water is the accessibility. And I know some of you out there, you probably have an old sprinkler clock in the garage that we show up and you say, well, where is it? Well, it was above the dryer, but the screw fell out, so now it's hanging behind the dryer. So then how often do you go out and adjust it? Well, I adjusted it last spring. I gave it like 5 days a week, and I haven't seen it since. So maybe this fall, when it cools down, I might go out there and take a couple of days off the program if I can find it. It's hanging behind the dryer somewhere. So that accessibility piece, just open your phone, open the app, make your changes. The easier it is to get to, the more apt you are to make changes. So that's one of the key factors with this. So within the Webix controllers, there's a picture of a Hunter Hydrowise, a Rainbird, there's a Toro version, there's a Ratio version. You know, it relies on accurate programming. So again, we talked earlier, there's two basic styles. The first one, you enter the peak month irrigation. That's the max runtime for, say, August. And then it'll adjust you the rest of the year based on a percentage. And then the other style requires you to put in plant type, soil type, root depth, slope potentially, lots of field and site information. And no one gets that exactly right, but it's better than just putting 10 minutes on it and letting it run. And eventually you're able to make some adjustments to those plant types and soil type selections to get your desired result. But again, knowing that it will auto adjust on its own is a huge factor. It's going to save a little bit of water every day, every week, and by the end of the year, adds up to a lot of water. So again, the different Webix will generate different schedules based on assumptions used and variations in the features. The whole process is really based on what's called managed allowable depletion, or MAD, and that's a term that's used across the industry, where basically we allow the plant or that zone to dry out to a certain point, and then it replaces the water back into the soil reservoir. So the two basic styles, don't need to get too far into the weeds on this, but one of them has a variable watering frequency, but it always puts back X amount of minutes. And that's your true site selection, where you put in your soil types and all that. It's kind of called the bucket method. So think of it this way. You've told the clock that it takes 10 minutes to fill that bucket back up. So it's not going to water until that bucket gets down to a certain point. But when it does, it's going to put back 10 minutes. And that's called deficit watering. I call it the bucket method, same theory. And once we reach that maximum allowable depletion threshold, it'll put back X that you've told it takes to fill that bucket back up. Might happen tomorrow, might happen the next day, might happen the next day, we don't know. But when it does get to that level, it puts back that 10 minutes. And then the other style is the fixed watering frequency with a variable runtime. And all that means is if I say, look, I want you to do something Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's just going to be a percentage of what my maximum minutes are. So that way you know, look, it's going to happen Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m., but it's going to be a percentage of my most water needed. So that's the two styles. And in the second style, the days remain constant. The start time stays constant, but the run time is what varies on each application. So that tends to be a little bit easier style to use in general, because people are able to put down, look, I want Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I want 6 a.m. And my most I'll ever need is 10 minutes, for example. So if that's what I'm going to get in August, come November, that might be 7 minutes. But you get a new percentage every single day. So you think it's a little bit of water differential? It is. But project that out over the entire year, and we're talking about a lot of water savings. Okay? So that's the two styles. The bucket method, which is variable watering frequency, but it always puts back the same amount. And the second is the fixed frequency, but a variable duration, or a variable runtime. Some of the controllers allow you to control these styles within the controller at the zone or station level. So you can see here in this Hunter Hydrowise version, I have station 1. I've told it, look, I want time-based. I don't want any effect. I just do what I tell you and nothing else. And here I have station 2 running by percentage, or virtual solar sync. And that's where the days are fixed, but the minutes will adjust based on weather. And here on station 3, I'm doing the full bucket deficit smart method, which says, I don't know when it's going to water next, but when it does, it's going to put back 10 minutes. So some controller systems let you do this at the station level, at the program level, and some don't let you make those decisions at all, because you only get one avenue to work through. So there's quite a bit of variance there with it. Some of the big the review points or the takeaways is Webix is a weather-based irrigation controller. Some are subscription-based, but most are free for the weather info. What I mean by that is 99% of the clocks that I know of, and I know the industry pretty well, if you were to go out anywhere you go, one-off homeowner, you buy a, quote, smart controller that is internet connected, Whatever brand you end up getting, by and large, you're going to be very happy with, because one, you pull out your phone, you can talk to it, and two, it's going to save you water because it will automatically help you reduce and increase run times. So you're going to be without any ongoing fees. There's no fees to start up. You just buy the equipment and the app is downloaded for free. There are some brands that allow the professional landscaper, your gardeners, to have access to your controller. And when they have multiple customers on their phone, they may have some fees potentially that they deal with, but none of those fees are carried over to you, the one-off homeowner, with a one-off controller ever. So do some homework beforehand. And if you do have a gardener that comes to your house, do you want to have him to have access, either full control or maybe just manual starts? While he's there, you can turn water on and check for breaks. Or do you do it all yourself and you don't need to have anybody else have control? Is it going to be the deficit method or is it going to be the percentage method? Do you have to put in all those site information facts or not? That's certainly some questions you want to kind of ask yourself before you pick a brand. Is the controller based on evapotranspiration or how quickly the plant loses water? Does it require an on-site sensor or does everything come through from the internet? And some of the controllers are for one-off users, others are multi-layered, so you can have your gardener, you can have a family member have access. And then going back to the weather feed, it's mentioned there. And let me just pause on that right quick because, you know, you're at your house, at your address, and you have an app from manufacturer of a controller, and you're relying on them to tell your clock what's going on at your location, at your weather. So even 5 years ago, the predictive weather ability was way rougher than it is now. Now we are so refined that you can type your home address into your system, and we have so many weather inputs, everything from Weather Channel, existing weather stations, the airliners that used to fly over the sky before COVID, smartphones that walk around. We get all this weather information from so many locations, and many manufacturers use that from multiple inputs to give your controller at your address the weather that you need for the controller to respond. So gone are the days pretty much of having to have an on-site sensor there at your location. Haley, how are we doing in the chat box?
Yes, so I actually have a couple of questions right now. The first one we received is, are Hunter controllers compatible with Orbit and Rainbird?
Yes, so well, that question would be better termed, is it compatible with Orbit or Rainbird or Toro hardware? So valves and sprinklers is one piece of a system, and your controller is your controller. So 100% of the time, the controllers have a specific firmware built into their keypad, their computers. It's a separate firmware. So controllers do not talk amongst themselves, but all the brand controllers put out 24 volts to all the sprinkler valves. So in that regard, they're all compatible electrically. So if you have, say, Orbit valves from Home Depot and you have a Hunter controller, not a problem. All those things mix and match.
Okay, great. And then the next question is, can I use my cell phone to remotely operate a controller?
Correct. So all of the brands that I'm familiar with, it's called cloud-based or a web-based app. So your cell phone has cell coverage and it has access to the internet at any given time. And so when you open an app, you're really talking back to the cell system, to the cloud. And then from there, it comes from the cloud back down to your router, to your controller via Wi-Fi. So you're really never talking directly to it. And because of that, whether you're in your side yard or you're down the street at Taco Bell, turning your clock on or off, or you're across the country, doesn't matter because you're talking to a cell tower all the time anyways.
Great. And then the next question is, what is the average price range for a weather-based irrigation controller? I know it all can depend on how many stations you might have or zones, but can you tell everyone the average cost of one of these?
Yeah, so, the industry for irrigation has always kind of based controllers on how many stations or how many valves you have on the property. And those are the different watering areas. Like station or valve 1 is the front lawn, station 2 is the side roses, station 3 is the backyard. So the typical residential controller that you see in the market, whether you buy it from a big box store, you get it through a water district rebate program, or you get it through a professional landscape supply house, those generally stop at about 12 stations. So 12 stations and under, 6 stations and under, your typical 6-station controller averages from $149 upwards of $250, depending on what model it is. And then your 12-station controller would be about half again as much more than that. If you have more than 12 stations, some brands go upwards of 54 stations with these same Wi-Fi smart-based controllers. But I would also ask some questions on the brand that it is, in that, is that box that you're purchasing, is it able to be updated, or when you buy it, that's all you get and it's never going to get updated to a new firmware ever again? Sometimes you'll see some brands that have these smoking deals on a certain controller, generation 2 or whatever, and because that's their generation 3 is coming out and they want to get rid of the old generation 2. So ask yourself, does that controller get updated automatically? I just buy the box and I'm good for 5 years to go from now and it just automatically updates, or am I stuck with what I bought?
Thank you, Mike. And another question we did receive, and I did respond to in the chat box already, but just in case everyone didn't see it, was someone did ask if there are rebates. There actually is a rebate of $80 per weather-based irrigation controller. So you can go onto our website to review that. It is important that once you purchase it, you want to make sure that you apply for that rebate within about 60 days from purchasing it, as it does have an expiration date. Like I said, that is $80. And if you go onto the website, SoCalWaterSmart.com, and I also listed that in the chat box, there's actually a list you can download of all the different devices that are eligible for the rebate. So if you want, you can take that to your local supply store, or if you want to Google search it, you can look at all the different kinds that are eligible and see which one works best for your property. Those were all the questions that I've seen so far. If anyone else has any other questions, please feel free to let us know, either using the chat box function, and we can definitely address those. That concludes our presentation, but we can definitely stand by for a few more minutes to see if anyone has any questions. If anyone has any questions, I'll give you a moment or two to write that in. In the meantime, I did mention in the beginning that everyone who stayed through this session, we are going to be doing a raffle. So we will go ahead and I will do that raffle right now. And then if anyone has any additional questions, they can go ahead and enter that into the chat box. But let's go ahead and we'll get started. And like I said, this raffle is for a $25 restaurant gift card to one of our local restaurants. Let's see here. And
Do you have the cranker wheel, like the bingo ball?
I do have a cranker wheel, yeah. Unfortunately, I wish if I could show my screen, I'd share it, but it looks like our winner for the $25 gift card is Bo Hansen. So congratulations, Bo Hansen. If you would like to private message us, and we can set up to get your information so we can send out your gift card. And like I said, if anyone has any additional questions, Mike and I will be here. So please feel free to hang around. In the irrigation booth that we have within our platform, there are additional tutorial videos as well. So if you want to look around and get some more information about different irrigation systems, you can explore that irrigation booth when you first entered into our event. Like I said, we will be here for additional questions. And then if you want more information regarding irrigation and water-wise planting, we actually will be having a live session at 11:20 to go through our garden as well. But like I said, please feel free to hang around and with additional questions. And Bo Hansen, if you could reach out to me, and actually I do know Bo from attending workshops, so I have your email address as well, so we can reach out to you. And thank you everyone so much for attending. We really appreciate it. Thank you for all the questions. We really appreciate that as well. And then like I said, Mike and I will be here for a few more minutes if anyone has more questions. Other than that, feel free to explore our other events, and we will be doing more live sessions at 11:20.
I'll just throw in too, if you're still there listening, that if you've not seen the outside of the building and the landscaping out there in the gardens, it's really worth your time to either stop by in person and or at least watch it here at 11 o'clock session, because it's really this time of year, it looks great, and it's a great example garden of low water use landscaping.
We have a couple of people in right now, Mike, but since we don't have any questions, do you just want to do a really quick recap of what a weather-based irrigation controller is? We have 3 new people that joined us.
So welcome you guys, we are talking about the world of what are called smart controllers, and the whole industry has evolved so quickly in the past 3 to 4 years. So now you're able to buy a smart controller that you can hook onto for your home irrigation, and they usually are internet-based or cloud-based, so you have access from your smartphone via an app, and the simple ability to have that quick access to the controller is really what saves a lot of water here. The controllers generally live in one of 2 realms. One, you have to put in site information like soil type or plant type to get all those parameters in the controller. And other styles, you just put in the maximum runtime that you'll need, and it just adjusts it up and down from there. So we've evolved so quickly that all the brands that you see that are available for purchase, Hunter has a system called HydroWise, there's Ratio, there's Orbit Beehive, Rainbird has a quote residential smart controller. And most of these controllers usually are about 12 stations or 12 valves or less. That tends to be kind of the residential model or size cutoff point. You can certainly get a larger station count if you need that based on the brand, but most of your track homes generally have 1 or 2 valves in the front yard, 1 or 2 or 3 valves in the backyard. That's 5. So typically 6 valves or 6 stations on a controller is plenty for most people. But you can also get up to 12 stations. Then 12 stations is kind of the cutoff, like I mentioned. So beyond that, you don't really need to have a weather station on site anymore, because these smart controllers get all the weather, or the ET, which is evapotranspiration, from a lot of different sources. The Weather Channel, all of our smartphones input weather information, airliners flying over our heads input information. So we're really able to forecast weather very, very well nowadays. And that weather forecast is what's put into play with your quote smart controller. And again, it's called a smart controller because it actually adjusts the minutes up and down, or adjusts the days, increases the days or decreases the days based on the current weather. So that's what's required for it to be a quote smart controller. And you know, they're always, well, they're usually most always app-based or cloud-based. So that means that manufacturer has the programming living in the cloud, and you can access that from a smartphone, from a tablet, from a computer, anywhere in the world. As long as you have internet access, you can go through the internet to get to your controller there on site. And it's kind of odd because if you think about it, printers, our home printers for our home computers, those printers have actually been able to be accessed to print documents from afar for quite a long time. I remember 6, 7, 8 years ago when you buy a printer, it says, oh, do you want to hook it through your router in case you want to access the printer from afar? You can print documents. Well, who wants to print documents when you're not at home, right? That's been around for a long time. But that's the same concept that we're using today with our smart irrigation controllers. Same concept we have for our smart thermostats. A lot of landscape low voltage lighting systems are also connected to the internet. So we have the ability to do this, and the cost has come way down for all this equipment. So there's really no reason not to have a smart controller for your irrigation at your house. Again, the simple accessibility, getting to that controller to make changes makes it so much easier to access, so you're more apt to really make those changes as needed. Any questions in the chat box there?
So far, we have no questions, but we can definitely recap the questions we had previously. The one that I know people are always really curious about is whether or not a weather-based irrigation controller system connects to a cell phone.
Yeah, so they'll always be able to connect through to a cell phone. Some of the controllers allow you to do stuff at the controller as well as from a cell phone, or computer or tablet. Other brands, there's just a little black box that has a green light on it, and you have to do everything from your cell phone or your computer. So you really want to consider those options when picking out what brand it is that you want to use. Again, the technology has gotten so much more economical that there's really no reason not to have a smart controller. And I can tell, if I were to take a poll of all you 8 or 10 people in the room, if I was to ask you, raise your hand, how many of you change your controller twice a year? Now, you might get a couple of people that raise their hand. So in the springtime, they add a couple of days to the week. They have no idea why station 5 is 8 minutes or 10 minutes or 12 minutes. It's just the way it was. So they simply add 2 or 3 more days in the springtime. And then if they're lucky, come September, October, they say, oh, gee, the days are getting shorter. It's watering 5 days a week. Let me make it 3 days a week. And if we had even half of the homeowners doing that, we would save so much water. But the vast majority of the controllers just get hung on the wall inside the garage somewhere. Then you build the shelves and you almost forget where the darn clock was located. And they just run them up 12 months out of the year. So the simple fact that you can have access from your phone, from your tablet, from your computer, super easy, super quick to get to that programming to make changes saves tons of water.
Thank you. And I got a couple more questions. So thank you everyone for putting those questions in. First off would be, where can you purchase one of these systems?
So you have many avenues to purchase. There are some things you can do online. You can also go to some of your big box stores, Home Depot, Home Base, I was going to say, that dated myself there, Home Depot and Lowe's. And then you've also got professional landscape supply houses like Site One, Imperial Irrigation, Ewing Irrigation. But I would, always preface it with what functionality you want out of the controller. And does it have access so my gardener can have access or not? Do I have to pay extra to have somebody else have access? Think about those things as you look at the different brands that are out there. But by and large, you as a one-off homeowner, if you went to a big box store or a landscape supply house and you said, give me that one, the simple fact that you can get to it, lickety-split, and make changes, you're going to save a lot of water compared to what you're currently doing. So it's pretty hard to mess this up. I mean, smart controllers are the way to go.
Yes, and then that kind of transitions into another question. We received this earlier, but it was asked again, was how much do these usually cost?
So typically you're going to see these starting at about $149, basically $129, $149. That's a simple 6-station controller roughly. And then it always goes by station count or station size. So that's maybe a 6 or 4-station clock. If you get upwards of 8 or 10 or 12 stations, that price point increases again. And there's also rebates out there that you can take advantage of to offset some of the cost. And Haley and the Water District has some great information on their site for some of these rebate programs. But again, roughly $149, give or take $30 to get started. But I would caution to look at the device carefully to make sure that it is able to be updated. Most manufacturers will update the device automatically, then the firmware in the device. Other manufacturers, when you buy that box, that's the box you get and that's it. And you might see a smoking deal or price on one. It's because that's the old one they're moving out because the new one's coming in, some new version. So consider that when you're making a choice as well too. Great.
And I did enter this into the chat box, but in case anyone missed it, we do offer rebates of $80 for weather-based irrigation controllers. You can go to our website for more information. And I actually do recommend reviewing it online because there are lists of all the different kinds of weather-based irrigation controllers that are eligible for the rebate. So that way you don't have to necessarily guess which one. You can go ahead and take a look, see which one would be best fit for your property. And then you can go ahead and then look at, our local supply stores such as Lowe's or Home Depot, or look online. People will buy them off of Amazon. So there is no wrong place where you can buy them, I should say, or we don't restrict you from buying it from one provider over another. But definitely that is something to take advantage of, is that $80 rebate.
Yeah, make a couple of choices, consider 2 or 3 brands, and then ask those 4 or 5 pertinent questions. Does it do this? Does it do that? I don't want it to do this, but does it do that? And then once you've narrowed down that brand, there's actually a list that's pretty robust that are considered smart controllers. And I really don't know of one that doesn't qualify almost. I mean, they all generally qualify for a rebate.
Great. So far, there's, I don't see any additional questions coming in through the chat box right now. But let's see here.
Well,
but
one last thing I might throw out, Haley, is the EPA Water Sense label. And so as you're looking at controllers to purchase, brands to purchase, there's an EPA or Environmental Protection Agency, there's an EPA Water Sense logo that they have come out with that they apply to all of these products that, that qualify for rebates. And so as you're making selections, if you see that EPA Water Sense logo, you'll know that it qualifies for the rebates.
And we actually did just get another question in, and the question is, how much water do you, on average, how much water would you typically save with a weather-based irrigation controller?
So, you know, 30%, 35%, that's just right off the top, because it's making constant changes. And most people might make 2 or 3 changes a year, whether they increase the runtime or they increase the amount of days of the week. They might decrease it in the fall or something, but you know, just off the top right away without doing almost anything, you're going to save 30, 35% very easily. And you have to remember too that, you know, your overall water usage, I mean, Haley, you might know this number better than I, but you know, it's 65, 70% of your total water usage can go to your outside landscaping.
Yes, it can.
So
yeah, so that's a big factor. People think that typically, a lot of times, people think that they use more water from their toilets or from their showers, when actually upwards from 50 to 70% of your home's water use is actually coming from your outdoor irrigation. So watering your grass or any other kind of landscape or plants that you have.
And one of the things that we've done historically is, you know, these aerator shower nozzles, we've gotten to where these shower heads are using less and less and less water for the past 20, 25 years. But think of it this way. One regular pop-up sprinkler in your yard, one pop-up sprinkler, a 15-foot sprinkler, uses about the same amount of water as your low-flow shower head in your shower. So if you've got 6 or 8 pop-up sprinklers on your front lawn, that's 6 or 8 shower heads. That's 6 or 8 people taking a shower at one time while your sprinklers are running. So that's how it's so easy to have 50, 60, 65% of your overall water usage going to your outside water landscape. And by using these smart controllers, you can really reduce right off the top a lot of water savings.
Great. Another question is, can I program the controller without internet? Or without Wi-Fi, I guess I should say.
Most brands you can, but not all brands. And that's a great question to ask yourself. Kind of make a list of, you know, what parameters I want to stay within and what manufacturer gives me that. Some models, you bet, you can either do it at the controller in the offline mode, or you can do it in the online mode. Other brands, again, it's a little black box and you hook it to the internet and you never talk that thing again because you have to do it all through your phone. So based on what works best for you and your scenario, you got to make those choices.
And then I just got another question in that says, really great question. When programming one of these systems, a weather-based controller, is there a default soil type we should use here in Southern California, or, you know, more specifically in the Inland Empire region?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is absolutely no. There's no default soil type. And that would be from the controllers that require you to put in your site information. And the reason why they're giving you the options to do that under soil is because certain soils are very fine-grained and certain soils are very sandy and open and porous. So those roots living in that soil profile, if you say that you're on the clay side or you say that you're on the sandy side of all these options, that relates to how quickly that soil is going to dry out and how quickly it has to fill that bucket back up for that deficit watering style. And so really there's no good answer to that. And it really boils down to you making your initial choices, and then you're going to have to watch and say, you know what, it just takes too long to put water back. I'm going to move more towards the sandy side of the choices, which means it dries out quicker, so I'll be watering more frequently. And you know, those stepping stones of soil types kind of get you in the neighborhood, But once you're running, you may have to move 1 or 2 spots left or right on the soil selections to get what you think is correct based on what you have. So there really is no generic soil type. And let me caution you, people always say, oh, I have clay soil. Well, clay soil, on those soil spectrums, when you say clay, that means that it's super fine and it takes multiple applications of water to get the water in there. And when it does get in there, it takes a lot longer for it to dry out. And you generally don't have what they call clay. You generally have something in between, either clay loam, loam is in the middle, sand is on the far side, or you have a sandy loam somewhere in the middle. But to have true clay soil, we're making pottery. I mean, that is some tough dirt. So you probably don't have true clay.
Thank you, Mike. All right, we have to wrap up soon, but I did get one more question. I want to make sure we address it because this is actually a very common question I do get. And that question is, where can you find someone to install a weather-based irrigation controller? Here at the Water District, unfortunately, we don't have anyone that does the installations in-house, and typically we aren't supposed to recommend one person over the other. But for you, Mike, is there anyone you can, or do you know where people can typically find an installer?
Yeah, myself as a manufacturer, this is how I've handled that question over the years. You know, you have multiple avenues to acquire the controller, whether it's online, big box store, however you get the clock. Now, if you're looking for an installer, I always tell people to check with their neighbors in their neighborhood. You'd be surprised if you asked your next door neighbor, he might say, you know what, I have a great gardener. He's installed 2 of my clocks over the years. Start there, number one, within your own neighborhood. And then number 2, we also have the professional landscape supply houses that are located all throughout Southern California. And if you were to contact one of those locations, they have professional landscapers that come into their stores, and they generally have a short list of phone numbers that they'll pass out. And those are stores like Site One Landscape Supply, Imperial Irrigation Supply, there's Ewing Irrigation, EWING. Those 3 are big landscape supply houses that cater just to contractors, and they can, I'm sure, also give you some local contractors.
Thank you so much, Mike. And that is, so far I've not seen any other questions, but we have reached our time. So thank you so much, Mike, for your expertise on weather-based irrigation controllers. We really appreciate it. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free, you can always give us a call or you can send us an email and we can definitely assist you then. And I do recommend in about 20 minutes, we are going to be doing a virtual tour of the WaterWise garden. So we'll actually get to go, virtually go through it and hear from our plant expert on different WaterWise plants. So definitely stick around for that. But without further ado, please feel free to enjoy the rest of our event. And we really appreciate everyone joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.